Hi everyone, today we are going to discuss about the examination center that we have in our student information system. Now for that, first you need to go to the exam center. I am going to discuss about the sub-modules of examination setup today. Now in examination setup, we have sub-modules like exam term, exam setup, exam scheduled, exam configuration, grade system, grade setup and marks conversion. Now as you can see, you will be able to see with the assessment dashboard where you can check with the academic session, the class, the term and the exam. Now for example, if you want to select any other exam, you can do that over through the drop down itself. Now you get to see with the statistics. Now how many students are there in your school, the number of attendance, like the percentage of attendance of the student, all student, then the student count, the examination result, the student result details. Now for example, if you want to check with student result detail, you can do it through here itself. Want to search if you want to search the student by their name, you can do that from here itself. Now we go to the exam term. Now once you click in the exam term, you can set up with the term. Now for example, you have to set with the session, the assessment term. Now for example, it can be term 1 or term 2. Once you select on term 1, you click on search. You get to see with the term 1 start date, end date, the created date of this term and the session. Now if you want to delete or maybe edit this, you can do that from action button itself. Now if you want to add a new term, you can create the new term from here itself by selecting the session, the assessment term, the term start date and the term end date. Once you fill with all these details, you can submit the term and your new term would be created. Now when we go to the next, now, if you want to do the assessment setup, you can do that from here itself. If you want to add with a new assessment type, you can add the assessment type by selecting the session, the assessment term. Now, for example, it can be term 1, the assessment type. Now, for example, it is music. Then the marks entry type. If it has to be a marks system or a grade system, you can select it from here itself. Then the description. Once you fill all these details, you can submit the new assessment type. Your record would be created successfully. Similarly, if you want to check with the assessment setup, you can select the session, the term. Now, for example, I want to check with the assessment setup of term 1. So I can click on term 1, the assessment type. Now, for example, it can be all. I want to check with all the assessment type. Now, if I click on search, you will get to see with the details like session, the assessment type, the assessment term, the assessment start date, the end date of the assessment, the total marks of the assessment, the passing marks of the assessment, the sub-assessment, and when you click on the action, if you want to add any subject exam, you can do that from here itself. If you want to edit the detail, you can do that, or if you want to delete the detail, you can do that from here itself. Now, if you want to also add the assessment setup, like you just have to click on the add assessment setup. You need to click on the session, the assessment term, the assessment type, like whatever type the assessment is. For example, if it is half yearly and you want to start the and you want to select the assessment start date and end date. Once you click on all these details, once you fill all these details, you can go to the submit and can submit the assessment type. Now moving on to the next, we have assessment scheduled. Now for example, if you want to check with the subject exam schedule, you can select the session, the assessment term. Now for example, it can be term 1, the assessment master, like if it is a half yearly or maybe a notebook exam or maybe a music skill exam or maybe any UT exam, you can select it from here itself. For example, right now I am selecting all, and the class I want to check with the grade 1 assessment schedule. Now once you click on the search, You'll get to see with the name, the exam type, the class, the start date of the assessment, and the end date of the assessment from here itself. Like for example, in class 1, we have UT1 exam, we have music skill exam, we have half yearly exam. Similarly, we have other exams. Okay, so when we move, like if you want to create a new exam schedule, you can do that from here itself. You click on the create exam schedule, you select the session, you select the assessment term, you select the assessment master, you select the class, you select the subject, and then you can click on the submit, and your new assessment schedule would be created successfully. Now when you go to next, if you want to schedule a exam, or maybe you want to check with the scheduled exam, you need to select with the class. Like I am selecting grade 1, the subject schedule. Now for example, it can be discipline, the status like initiated or maybe approved. The exam schedule is being initiated or approved. Now for example, I take approved. The term, it is term 1 or term 2, I take term 1. And the type, now what type of exam it is, I take half yearly. Now when you click on the search, you will get to see with the exam type, the subject, the shift of the exam. Now for example, at what time will the exam happen, at then the assessment status of the exam, the assessment date of the exam, the assessment start date of the exam, and the assessment end date. Now you can check with all these details. Now if you want to add a new shift, you can do that from here itself. Now for example, if it is afternoon shift, right? Now for example, if it is afternoon shift, if your exam is in afternoon, you can click on afternoon shift. You can select the start time. Now for example, it can be uh, 3 p.m. and the end time of the exam is 4 p.m. So you can select with that, you can add on with a new shift. Once you do this, your record would be submitted successfully. Now moving on further, it's all about the exam setup. In my further video, I would be discussing about the grade system setup, the grade setup, and the marks conversion. Thank you.